This is John Karp from the 48 Laws of Power podcast. My debut album is now available on all major streaming platforms and can be downloaded on iTunes and Amazon.com. Go to johncarp.com for more details. That's JONCARP.com. Thank you.
Don't forget about me.
Hey everyone, John Karp here. Just wanted to give you all a heads up. We will not be releasing the next episode of the 48 Laws of Power podcast next Monday, as Rudy and I will be observing the Thanksgiving holiday, but we will be back with the next episode the following Monday on December 3rd. Thank you for your understanding, and now, on to the show.
What's going on, everybody? You're tuned into the 48 Laws of Power podcast. My name is Rudy Malumba.
And I'm John Karp.
Let's get right into this book. This episode, we're going to do Laws 33 and 34. Law 33 is, discover each man's thumbscrew. The judgment is, everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion or need. It can also be a small secret pleasure. Either way, once found, it is a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage.
All right. Well, this is one of those where we're going to forgo the reading of transgressions or observances and just go through the different principles that Robert Greene lays out here.
That's good.
So basically, you're trying to find the thumbscrew of someone to gain power. This is essentially what this whole chapter's about.
Yeah.
As I've said in other, or rather, as we've said in other times where we've confronted these kinds of laws, if you're interested in reading about the transgressions and observances related to this law, I highly encourage it. They're really interesting, and it will definitely illustrate these points a lot better.
Definitely.
But we're not a book review. We're merely commenting on the book.
Yeah.
So, take that.
And analyzing it a little bit. Also.
Exactly, yeah. So, take that during your own time and do that. I highly encourage it. But we'll go ahead and run through the principles because that's what the bread and butter of this law is all about.
Absolutely.
So, the first one is pay attention to gestures and unconscious signals. So, try as one might, no one can hide their desires or weaknesses. People will inadvertently reveal these in day-to-day conversation or even in body language. It is therefore important to become observant of these tendencies in others so that you can use them to your benefit. Got it before the sneeze.
Yeah.
So basically, whether people acknowledge it or not, try as they might to hide their insecurities, it'll come out in their conversation.
Definitely.
And even their body language.
Yeah.
So that's something you want to look out for, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, something that I notice a lot is that women who are, let's call them the hot girl at the bar, right? The ones who very much value or they give off the presence of, I'm just the hot chick at the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's interesting about them is they're some of the most insecure people because the thing that they're most valued for is their hotness, their attractiveness, their physical attractiveness, I should say.
Yeah.
But what's something that they're not as generally valued for is their intelligence, right? Yeah. And some of these women actually are quite intelligent. Some of them are very intelligent. But it's not something that they're ever noticed for because, you see an attractive woman and as humans are the first things that we identify are the exteriors, right?
Yeah. Symmetry, things like that.
Exactly.
Whatever else, yeah.
So let's say you're a male and you want to attract this, physically attractive woman, rather than just kind of commenting on her external beauty, kind of comment on her intelligence, like
Yeah.
in conversation. Obviously, don't just walk up to her and go, "Hey, you're intelligent," because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
dumb. But have a conversation with her and be like, that's a really interesting point you brought up. That's a very intelligent analysis of whatever you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? And she'll find that irresistible
Absolutely.
because it's not something she's given any attention towards whatsoever, generally speaking.
Yeah. And so she might be, because people are always talking about her attractiveness, she actually is going to feel insecure about her intelligence either way, whether she's intelligent or not. People just don't talk about it. So because of that, she's insecure about that. And also, I feel like if we're staying with this example here, with kind of like the hot chick, kind of thing, they, for a lot of them, they might also be aware of how fleeting their looks are, where it's like they become doubly insecure on how they look also, because they go like, oh, is everything, is the shoe dropping right now? Like, am I starting to look terrible? We definitely, I have sisters and things like that, so I definitely know of kind of them being kind of hypercritical about like, oh, my eyes look terrible here, or pinpointing just like the simplest, smallest things. But yeah, I feel like it's ultimately, I feel like what Robert Greene's talking about here is everyone has some sort of weakness, I guess, or some sort of thing that they're trying to. Some people minimize it. Some people don't even do it. They just kind of say it out loud. But everyone has that weakness, right? So it's all about kind of training your eye to find it for whatever, from whatever person you're kind of dealing with. And the way most people deal with these weaknesses, the ones that don't say it out loud, is they hide it in a certain way. But when anything is hidden, it's shown out in another way. It's something kind of unconscious. So it's all about training your eyes to what's not seen, but kind of trying to figure it out in other ways.
And I think this the example I brought up, I may have actually subconsciously pulled from another Robert Greene book, which is The Art of Seduction.
Art of Seduction, yeah.
Actually, what you brought up too
Mm-hmm.
was also in The Art of Seduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because there's actually ways for you to like if you're paying attention to unconscious signals, there's actually because you coming up and pinpointing like a woman's attractiveness or a woman's intelligence, like an attractive woman's intelligence, is kind of like a positive way to do this, to get a response. I know in that book specifically, there's other ways to do it too, where you actually go up and you maybe say something negative about like their appearance, and then it's something they're insecure about too, and they'll kind of, you're gonna get their attention that way, and then there's a way to like whatever, but yeah, I mean, ultimately you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, and seduction is a power play.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like the same thing as like conquering a country or whatever, or excelling in your career, but it is a power game. It's an odd dynamic game, and it's a dynamic game in which both men and women enjoy being in the position of power and also not being in the position of power. Like men all, we attribute, if we're talking about seduction being a power game, most people's first thought would be that, oh, well, men probably obviously like to play the powerful role and women would prefer to play the submissive role. It's not always the case. In fact,
Cleopatra and
more often,
like
more often than not, it actually, both of those roles switch, depending on, actually, they'll switch mid-conversation oftentimes. And that's how you know it's the seduction process is going really well, is when both parties are able to play the dominant and submissive.
Yeah,
within
kind of
that.
participating in it.
Yeah, exactly. Because men like to be seduced just as much as women do, and women like to be the seducers just as much as men do.
Definitely.
And a good seduction process kind of allows for both parties to play both roles.
Yeah.
Within the interaction.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting for the Art of Seduction book specifically. What Greene talked about in the beginning of that, the little intro of the book, he pretty much has said that kind of historically, power had always been kind of in general, it had kind of been mostly men who kind of participated in, who were kings and things like that. And so women, the seduction game, originally, it kind of started with women kind of being in the forefront of it and kind of gaining the power back, but not through like physical means, kind of gaining it more kind of on an intellectual level. And the main example he had for that was Cleopatra, and kind of how she was able to sustain that much power, really based off of kind of seduction and kind of the attractions that she had to very powerful men. But the powerful men that she was involved with they played to her every whim, but at the end of the day, it's a very it's kind of a dance like that both men and women, whoever's participating in it, can go back and forth with.
Now, we may have kind of steered off into another conversation about a different book and talking about this. How, Rudy, would let's stick with this example. How would a conventionally attractive woman give off the want to be recognized for her intelligence? What kind of unconscious signals do you suppose she would give off?
It's very interesting. I would imagine, one, I think you'd be able to tell how if you supposedly go out to a woman who's maybe at the bar, she's very attractive. I would assume maybe there's a few people trying to get her attention, and you could probably tell by the look on her face what the things are working and what things aren't working. So if people are just talking about how beautiful she looks and you look great and that, you could probably, I would assume she's heard it all before, so she'd be bored with it and things like that, blah blah whatever. I would imagine if you do go up and you kind of start throwing conversations at her, the conversations that start with something kind of that's more geared towards intelligence or something, like if you go up to her and instead of saying, hey, nice legs, toots, or whatever, but instead you say like, oh, did you catch that debate or whatever? Or maybe that's a little too cheesy, but anything that kind of where you're going up to her and you're kind of just engaging her with something else, something.
There might be a change in her body. Like, if you bring up a more kind of intellectually driven topic, her eyes might light up.
Yeah.
Maybe her tone of speech will change.
Yeah.
She might like it. I think biologically speaking, women who are excited, the pitch of their voice goes up.
Okay.
Right. Instead of, whereas if they're not that interested, it goes downwards. And part of that is evolutionary because, evolutionarily speaking, a higher pitched voice attracts more men than a lower pitched.
Interesting.
That it has to do with like virility.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's because as well, this is getting into another tangent, but basically as women age, the pitch of their voice drops. So if the higher pitch of their voice is, it's a sign of their sexual reproductive ability.
Birthing age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And whether men realize this or not, we're hardwired to find women who are the most likely to produce offspring.
Okay.
That's how that's what evolutionarily is going on. Yeah. We think that it's just some hot chick at a bar, but it's really like, I can make babies with this lady.
I want to extend the species.
Yes, whatever, exactly. Yeah. That's what's really going on subconsciously. So, but, so when a woman is excited by the presence of a certain male, subconsciously, without probably her even realizing it, she'll bring up the tone of her voice. Oh yeah, the pitch of her voice rather, which is so that's something you can look out for.
And it indicates to the man too that she's into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, probably more subconsciously.
Yeah.
Although, but if you study this kind of stuff, you might be able to pick up on that immediately.
Yeah.
Again, these are all things little tricks that you can learn.
Yeah.
In your seduction games and all that. And
like Green says, if you train your eye to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And men can do this and women can do this because men also give off certain signals of interest to women. Apparently
a lower voice too is something that they say I think is more attractive to women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Because it's generally speaking like
testosterone, I guess.
Yeah, higher. There's usually if you're a male with a deeper voice, you have more testosterone. Yeah. Than others. I mean, and when I say more testosterone, I don't mean like an expedient amount of it. Yeah. But or an exponential amount, I should say. but it's just like you have like a little bit more than a male who doesn't. You
Okay.
know, it's just another one of those signs.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Definitely.
It's one
Yeah.
of those things.
But it seems like but body language is definitely, I guess, the main thing here. Based on, you can kind of tell what if we're talking about kind of insecurities and things like that. By looking at by bringing up different topics and then seeing how body language changes, you can kind of tell. Oh, it's an unconscious thing they're doing, but those are different things they respond to. I guess. So I guess that's a way to use this technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next one. Find the helpless child. Now, I don't think this really works for seduction, at least not for me.
Absolutely not.
Find a helpless child. Most weaknesses begin in childhood, and you can discover this weakness if you touch on it, as the person will respond in a childlike manner. Better yet, you can supply this childhood need, and the person will be unable to resist you. So, yeah, like, this is a very common tactic used by people who like are trying to exploit somebody.
Yeah.
It's funny enough, actually, I see a lot of Army recruiters use this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, to get more recruits. Because a lot of time, I don't know if you've noticed this. At least when I was in high school, I noticed that the recruiters would go after the kids who generally weren't doing that well in school.
Yeah.
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 And they would pretty much avoid the kids who were doing incredibly well in school
Because they have more options.
Exactly.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And think about it this way, like, if you're a kid and you're in high school and you're not doing well in school, you know, like you said, you don't feel like you have a whole lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like a helpless child, because you kind of are in a way.
Yeah.
The military is a really good option for you.
Yeah.
And recruiters know that, and they go after those kids.
Yeah.
Not saying that this is a bad thing. I mean, a career in the military is just fine.
It
But
could be effective.
huh?
The way it's marketed could be effective.
Exactly. Well, it's a marketing thing.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that military recruiters are like, cults or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just saying in terms of marketing,
Yeah.
I should have opened that way. In terms of marketing, it's a really effective.
And when you think about it, I mean, it kind of any military kind of advertisement I've seen, there's the music in the background, kind of a patriotic kind of thing, and then there's the they kind of say, oh, you get to travel the world and experience all these things. It's kind of like a call for adventure kind of thing. And I mean, what's the one thing the kids play with when they're like, young boys usually?
Yeah, G.I.
Joes and like the military thing. Like it kind of pulls you in that way where it's like all those things that you did as a kid, like you could do this for real.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you feel like you're stuck in a place where it's like, oh, I'll never be able to get out of here, it's like you get to travel to all these different countries and do these fun things.
And then imagine this too, like you get a chance to be a hero.
Exactly.
Right. And that's especially enticing. Let's say if you were a kid who was bullied a lot.
Yeah.
And that you wanted to, or that you had friends who were bullied, and that you wanted to stand up to the bullies of the world.
Exactly.
Because you saw a lot of injustices. I mean, that's very enticing for somebody who, felt helpless.
Yeah.
Growing up, not being able to stand up to bullies or what have you.
Definitely.
Here's your chance to, be a hero, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the military advertisements are definitely kind of using this technique, like the helpless child thing. I mean, ultimately, with they, from what I've heard over the years, we all kind of have an inner child, and there's all these things that aren't addressed as children, or maybe they were addressed the wrong way or whatever, that we just constantly deal with over the course of our lives if we don't address it, if we don't do kind of a deep dive about it. And those things can be very obvious. And it's definitely there's definitely tons of examples of how people can kind of take advantage of that.
Well, something he brought up too was if you touch on that weakness in a person, or basically you're almost like taking like a hot poker, like a fire poker, and you're kind of just poking at the person and seeing what gets them going.
Yeah.
So like let's say, I don't know, let's say there's an overweight man,
Yeah.
and I want to like
Yeah.
exploit this guy in some
Yeah.
way, right? You know, I might try. The first thing probably that would come to my mind is let's go for the overweight thing. You know, so I might throw a
Yeah.
fat joke.
Yeah.
He laughs it off. Okay, obviously his weight is not an issue to him.
That's not a sticking point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's probably been overweight for quite some time. He's probably
Learn to adjust.
He's learned to adjust to it.
Yeah.
He's learned to accept that and move on.
Yeah.
Well, okay. He's wearing a yarmulke. Maybe I can make a Jewish joke.
Yeah.
Again, nothing.
He's cool with
He's
that.
Jewish. He's been
His
through
identity is pretty solid.
pretty much.
Yeah.
But then I see, then I see that he has like a club foot. Maybe I go after that, and then but that's a different thing. That really gets him going.
Yeah.
So, granted, he probably has had this club foot for all his life, but for whatever reason,
Yeah.
he hasn't been able to accept that or
He hasn't dealt with that. Yeah.
dealt with that.
Yeah.
So now that I know that triggers him,
Mm.
I can kind of, change my tone and, become this really nice guy to him
Mm.
and really highlight like, oh, you poor thing with your club foot.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then, he might start thinking like, oh, this guy really cares for me, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, someone who might be like that might be just luring this person into some kind of trap.
Yeah.
That's definitely something to look out for. I mean, obviously I would never do that, but there are definitely people in this world who would.
Definitely.
So, if you do have that kind of weakness, again, you can't hide it, as we talked about before. It's going to seep out somehow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it would be behoove you to find those insecurities that you still hold over from childhood, and if not completely get rid of them, at least be aware of them and and manage them
Yeah.
in some way.
Definitely. Well, I think I've, there's another example maybe of someone who, let's say they grew up in a childhood, they grew up in a home where, let's say they had like an older brother, older sister, or anyone else in their family who was like a brilliant student or something. And let's say they were more kind of mediocre. So their whole lives they grew up and they always kind of felt inferior, not as intelligent, all that stuff. Now someone comes up to, this is years later, they're somewhere and someone's trying to scam him into something, right? They're trying to sell him something. Maybe that's faulty, maybe that's whatever. Or maybe it's a salesman somewhere. And then they go with, you seem like a smart person. You know what I mean? So like, I'm only going to sell you this thing. And the person completely becomes blinded to what, like he's not able to really use their full faculties and analyze what this person's trying to sell to me. He goes, oh, this guy thinks I'm smart. So I don't want this person to think the other way. So yeah, let me go along with what it is they're saying. And so if it taps into like your insecurities growing up, if you're someone who kind of felt insecure about, your intelligence and stuff, and they're flipping it to making money.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I think we did for
Law 21.
catch a sucker to
play
catch a sucker to be a
that's Law 21.
play a sucker to catch a sucker.
We also talked about it in the what was it? I think it was in the build a cult like following, where like a lot of times cults will they'll go after people who are highly intelligent.
Oh yeah,
because it's a lot more likely to convince someone of something great if they have the intelligence to imagine that, as opposed to somebody who doesn't have the intelligence to imagine that.
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing.
They have the capability to be more selfish and be more like, oh, think about all the things I could get. So their mind kind of, keeps going off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So number 3, look for contrasts. An overt trait often conceals its opposite. So this is kind of related to the first one we talked about, except this person
is kind of overcompensating.
Is overcompensating, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you drive around, you see a guy driving a jacked up pickup truck, and you're like, okay, this guy's probably compensating
60-inch wheels and like a really huge. I don't even know they make those 60-inch.
16-inch or 60-inch?
60-inch.
60? No.
I don't think they do. But
16? Okay.
16, okay, yeah.
60,
but
no.
Those big monster truck things, though, those are huge. Those like
Well, those aren't.
tires.
Yeah, but those aren't road legal. That's not what I'm talking
okay,
about.
gotcha.
I'm talking about someone that took like an F-350 and jacked it up. And
Oh yeah.
that's who I'm talking about.
The car's going through and it's like bouncing through the road and stuff.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
he doesn't do those
Obviously, the
things.
guy doesn't use it on the farm because it's spotless.
Exactly.
Doesn't even
yeah.
have a hitch on it, or if he does, like there's no markings on the hitch, so
Absolutely.
you know that okay, this guy's just
He wants to prove, oh look, I'm a big man.
he
and
wants
I'm
to show.
killing it.
Yeah, he wants to show how masculine he is,
Exactly.
and if you have to go through that much effort to show off how much of a man you are, you're
Mhm.
probably insecure about your manliness.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
that's kind of the popular joke. That's probably common in the entire English-speaking world, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Definitely.
If not, though, in America, that's our joke. If we see someone driving something like that, then we kind of go, "Oh, he's compensating for something."
Absolutely. Yeah. we've all heard the joke, right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and it's true though. I mean, like the people who are the most like bombastic,
Mhm.
you could say, they're probably the most insecure people.
Yeah.
They're probably the most afraid.
Also, I mean, we've seen the pastors who go on the news or who go on TV and are furiously like anti-gay and stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
2 months later, they're at truck stops with like gay people and stuff like that. They
Yeah.
were gay the whole time, or people who are like maybe ultra right, talking about family values and stuff. Meanwhile, they're cheating on their
Mhm.
their wives and things like that. It's kind of a sign when someone is over the top about something, and they're constantly saying, "Oh, I'm this great person," or I'm this, that maybe they're hiding something else that they're not dealing with. So I feel like this tactic here works for like it's mostly exhibited in people who are over the top the other way. You know what I mean? That's usually a telltale sign that they're hiding something.
Yeah.
They're over the top with it.
Definitely. Find the weak link. There is always someone in a group that's weaker than the rest. Find them and you can infiltrate the group. So this is really common military tactic.
Yeah.
In fact, during the Battle of Thermopylae, in case anyone's wondering what that is, that's the battle from 300.
Oh yeah.
The 300 Spartans
This
and
is Sparta.
this is Sparta, and they
Yeah.
kicked the guy in the pit.
That's great. That was a great documentary. On,
yeah, very. I think it was based on a graphic novel, not
Oh
the
really?
historical events.
Okay.
At least I hope it wasn't based on the historical events, because I'd say you missed the mark there.
He certainly did.
But in any case, so in the Battle of Thermopylae, what had happened was the Greeks kind of positioned themselves in between this mountain pass, and that's how they were able to fend off these Persians for so long. Because Xerxes, the leader of the Persian army, had just tons of men at his disposal. So it was like, how is it that this thin band of Greeks is able to fend off this entire army? Well, the fact was, they had gotten the Persian army into a chokehold because they were between these two mountain passes. It was like they were basically fighting in a wide canyon, right?
Yeah.
So no matter how much the Persians tried to push through, they could not break through this Greek line. Well, until one of the Greeks defected to the Persians, right, and told them about this secret passageway they could use to come around and get the Greeks in from the back as well as in the front. And so they were basically able to surround the Greeks, and
Oh, okay.
so that's how that all went down.
Yeah.
So there's always that one person within a group that, if things get too hairy, they're gonna jump ship,
Yeah.
just like that Greek guy did.
Absolutely.
Maybe he got tired of, because it's only a matter of time before all these Greeks were gonna get slaughtered. It was gonna happen, and he was gonna be one of them. So I guess he probably figured, well, I'll just go ahead and be a traitor and save my own skin, and to heck with everybody else.
Absolutely.
Right? So there's always that person who is not entirely, like, they're committed to a cause or something, but only up to a certain point.
Exactly. And the strength of the group is really dictated by kind of that person,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of I mean, if you're trying to find someone's thumbscrew, or if you're dealing with a group, then you find the one person or the one element of the group that's easy to infiltrate. And if not everyone in the group is committed fully,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have and their motivations are somewhere else, then clearly you can go and get to that person's you kind of pick at that person's motivations, and then you can get all the info about the group and all that stuff, and everything's kind of messed up from
That's
there.
how double agents are made.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of if anything, this tactic kind of it's I mean, it deals with the one person who's easy to infiltrate, but that person's in a larger group, so they're kind of it's to the detriment of the group.
Well, there's that old saying that we're only as strong as our weakest link.
Exactly. I think that's 100% true.
Yeah.
I think like even even at work, if you like where I work, it's kind of a small group of people. We're as strong as the least dedicated person.
Yeah.
That we work with.
Well, that's true in like sports too.
In sports too, yeah.
You want to destroy a football team real quick, get a crappy quarterback.
Exactly. Yeah. or like a crappy line. Like,
or safety or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
A crappy kicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just go at them like if your kicker's crappy, then just step up your defense, put them in weird situations where they can't, like let's say they don't score a touchdown and the kicker's like 40 yards out, boom,
Yeah.
they'll never make it.
Exactly.
They'll go 3 and out, the kicker comes out, boom, misses, you win the game.
Yeah.
Or if like your safety's bad or your whole secondary is bad, just get your quarterback to throw like 90 times.
Even if your defense is weak, I mean, there's the old saying in football, defense wins championships, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
It's the same thing.
Your defense is bad, they'll just run all over you, and they'll stay on the field longer than your offense. So boom, you don't even have a chance to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so yeah.
We always find a way to bring football in here.
The Redskins are on top of the division. Just saying.
Yeah, they are.
Whatever.
I know. It's people keep. Well, they're in the same division of the Giants, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, well,
I would get too.
Pretty weak division. The Giants are bad. The Cowboys are bad.
Cowboys are not doing so well.
Still,
who else isn't?
The Eagles. The Eagles won the Super Bowl last year,
and they're not doing well.
Exactly. So
yeah.
Maybe it's just how great we are, but.
Well, no, the Redskins are a good team.
Yeah. They're putting it together.
But I'm not gonna. But there's a lot better teams too, though.
Yeah, true.
I'm just saying. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not devolve into football
Yeah.
talk. Let's see. Okay, feed on uncontrollable emotions. If someone cannot control their emotions, they often cannot control themselves, and this can allow you to control them. This is so true. Like people who blow up very easily, they don't have self-control, really.
No.
And if they can't control themselves, like I just said, then well, you can step in and kind of, turn the wheel for them, so to speak.
Exactly. You can control them for you, pretty much. You can ultimately you can turn their drives to work for you instead of for them, because they can't control it. They're not in charge of it. So you can essentially go in there and take the driver wheel from them.
Yeah.
And manipulate them that way, and they won't know the difference. Or they'll be in a thing where they'll be thinking, why is this person doing it to me, even though it's their emotions that are doing it?
Right.
I mean, like, what they'll be thinking, like, why is this person making me so angry that I can't function? Or why is this person making me so sad I can't function? Why is this blah, blah, whatever? But ultimately, things that, you should be in control of, someone's in control of for you.
It's something that kids do in school all the time. They'll find some kid that just reacts to things, and they'll just keep egging them on.
Exactly.
Until, and it's a gain to them.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's a microcosm of what adults do too. It's like when you see the weakest person, I think even subconsciously you go, let me mess with that person. That's something that like you have to rein in when you get older. But I mean, it's something that I think we have a tendency to do. When we see someone who can't control stuff, you kind of want to, mess with that person. And it's something that kind of just points to how, because in this book we talk about power and we talk about how to get it and stuff, and there's a few through lines in there, which is one of the through lines is about how power is all about the what's seen, and everything like that. And there's a lot of things under the surface, but also a big part of that is controlling your emotions. Your emotions, like that's the first layer that people go after. So if you're not in control of it, you're essentially screwed. Like anyone can get anything off on you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the realities of the world. Like people will go at you. People will try to, get things through you. So I feel like the mastering your emotions is the number one thing you should continually try to do, so people don't take advantage of you.
Well, yeah, and we've talked about this before, where people who have gained great amounts of power in history didn't placate to people's logic or reasoning. They placate to their emotions. And this is one of those things where, if you have a whole group of people that's experiencing a great deal of anxiety, let's say like during, the lead up to World War II in Germany, where the economy in Germany was so deplorable, it's easy to go, well, it's the Jews' fault, right? Yeah. And then people go, yeah, it's their fault, and they get like super angry. They start foaming at the mouth, and you just keep playing at that.
Exactly.
Pretty soon you've got a devout group of followers, which is what the Nazi Party basically preyed on.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter how outrageous the claim is, Of course the Jews had nothing to do with the economic depravity of Germany. But again, logic and reasoning go out the window if you're preying on people's weakened emotional state.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And especially with that too, that there's also other elements that go in, like the group dynamic, and how when there's a group involved, sometimes you just follow the group, or people wanting to kind of make a complex thing more simple and things like that. But ultimately it comes down to people not being able to control themselves, and someone who's more disciplined and someone who's more in control of their emotions will control their emotions for them, essentially.
Well, like what you just said there, making a complex thing more simple, that kind of leads into the last one, which is fill the void. If you can fill one's emotional void, you gain tremendous power. The two main emotional voids are insecurity and happiness. And going back to the example of pre-World War II Germany, if you can fill that void by creating a scapegoat,
exactly,
right? Then it sort of, in a way, it relieves people's anxiety.
Exactly.
And because they now have somebody, or a group of people in this case, to point their fingers at and go after.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. With filling the void, it's essentially, I feel like this is similar to playing to people's fantasies. The law, I think it was 32 that we talked about, where you're kind of giving the people, or the person or the people, some level of comfort where they kind of get dependent on you, but you're feeling so they're unhappy naturally, and you're momentarily solving that for them, right? So I feel like another good example of that is these people who fall for these men who fall for overseas people who catfish them. There's someone from Peru or some Eastern European country where they go I'm a single woman and stuff, and they form a relationship online through emails and things like that, and then the person goes, hey, listen, send me $5,000 or whatever, since you love me and stuff, and then they go, okay, and they send it to him. It's like they might understand, this is kind of crazy that I've fallen in love with this woman on the internet, but temporarily I'm unhappy and I'm dealing with all these things, but she's solving that for me right now in this moment. So because I don't want to let that pleasure go, I don't want to let that that void that's being filled right now go, I'm gonna go with it. And it's like people tend to kind of I guess feed into that. They respond to that, even though they know that what they're doing is crazy. They still just go, I'm not unhappy right now. I could be if I know what the truth is, but I like the pleasure of not being unhappy, that I'm going to go with whatever is presented to me.
Well, I think it's a perfect example, because it goes after those two main emotional voids that Robert Greene's talking about: insecurity and unhappiness.
Yeah.
These people are insecure about themselves because they're like, well, I don't have a girlfriend or a wife or whatever.
Yeah.
This person's giving me this attention, So, it validates me, so it makes me feel better about myself. And
Exactly.
because I don't feel so insecure, I'm happier.
Exactly.
Right.
Meanwhile, it's a guy like in his mom's basement or something.
Yeah. And
Who's
from
pretending
Boston.
to be from Boston. He's pretending to be like Sophia or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I think we're on to the reversal now.
Sounds good. The reversal for this law essentially says that by stirring up all these uncontrollable emotions that you have with people, it could turn on you, because by kind of poking at people's thumbscrews, like you don't necessarily know to the extent of how uncontrollable the emotion that you're poking at is, and if the emotion is uncontrollable to a grand scale, it could all turn on you and it could affect you in a negative way. So you don't know how the person's going to react. Like they, once they realize that maybe you're poking them a little too hard or all that, then, I mean, it could turn into something really disastrous. Like they could physically harm you or whatever else. But there's a very, it's good to be a little bit more measured if you are taking advantage of people. I mean, which I wouldn't recommend, but essentially it's you don't know the extent of people's experiences, so you don't know where those insecurities come from. So those insecurities could turn around and bite you, essentially.
Yeah, and as we always say in this podcast, obviously there's good ways to apply these and there's bad ways to apply them. Obviously, we promote the moral high ground. And there are ways that you can fill the void. Let's say you have a really petty boss.
Mm-hmm.
You can fill their void by, placating to their deepest insecurities, and you can figure out what those are by, looking at their contrast. If they're an exceptionally boisterous boss, they're probably, truly deeply inside, they're probably pretty weak and indecisive or something like that. And, and also you can just read body cues, like what we talked about when we first started talking about this topic. And you can use that to help advance yourself in that company, win the favor of that boss.
Or you could even like affirm your boss and make him, a better person.
Yeah, you could do that too, actually.
Filling the void, it's like you're maybe giving them something that they don't have and then also affirming them. But ultimately, I mean, especially with filling the void, it's like you're essentially making someone dependent on you, which in a like a work environment, you're advancing yourself by doing that because they see kind of how important you are.
That's true. They're not going to want to. You tie up your value to theirs, basically.
Exactly.
We talked about this in an earlier law.
Yeah, this was the
make yourself
Law
indisposable.
9.
Yeah.
Law 9, I think.
Yeah. So
Or
there's good ways to use these.
I think so. Ultimately, I look at this law specifically as defensive. This is one of my favorite laws where, I don't necessarily want to, pick at people's thumbscrews, but I feel like this is something that's useful to know because you have to get ready for any and everything.
True.
Ultimately, people are going to take advantage of you any way possible. While it's good to be optimistic, it's also good to be prepared. So, mastering your emotions is a very important thing to do. We all have weaknesses. We all have we all have insecurities. There's not one person that doesn't have it, but it's about working them, and it's about really trying to get to the root of a lot of them and making peace with them so that people don't come at you and say, oh, this guy's obviously insecure about A, B, C, and D. Let me pick at that. It's more like the example you had about the overweight guy who, you say something to him and he's kind of dealt with that part of him. And then you go, okay, the yarmulke thing, he's dealt with that. So it's like you kind of want to do any and everything you can to address all the things that you're, that you might be dealing with. That way, no one can take advantage of you in this way. So
that, and if someone is coming after you, you've got something to come back at them with.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, Law 34.
All right. Let's move right along to Law number 34. Law number 34 is be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king to be treated like one. The judgment is the way you carry yourself will often determine how you are treated In the long run, appearing vulgar or common will make people disrespect you. For a king respects himself and inspires the same sentiment in others. By acting regally and confident of your powers, you make yourself seem destined to wear a crown.
All right, so Robert Greene gives both a transgression and observance of this law. However, upon reading the transgression, I didn't really care for it. I thought it was kind of counterproductive to the discussion of this law.
We weren't feeling the transgression on this.
Yeah.
You know?
Again, if you want to check out the transgression, I encourage it. Check it out. Maybe you have a different opinion on it in terms of its applicability to this law.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, tell me I'm wrong at the 48 Laws of Power podcast at gmail.com.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Write us.
I may or may not read it.
Yeah. We'll go straight to the spam folder. That's where that goes.
Yeah. I
All
might,
critiques.
I might, depending on if it's a good one, if it's a good critique, I'll read it. If it's stupid, I'll delete it.
Absolutely.
So just bear that in mind.
Yeah. What's the word? It's the bias where you look for things you agree with.
Oh, confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias. Boom.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So if you agree with us, we'll use it. If you disagree, boom, it goes away.
No, if you bring up a good point, let me put it this way: if someone has a good point to bring up, I'll listen to them.
Definitely.
Why not? Give it a shot. But if if you're just going to devolve into talking about my mom or whatever, I'm not giving you the time of day, dude.
Absolutely.
It's like, grow up. Anyway, however, the observance of this law I thought was excellent.
Me too.
And it was about Columbus. So I didn't know this, but Columbus had made up this big story about how he was descended from a lot of basically more or less royalty.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a whole bunch of people historically that he supposedly was related to, and it went as far back as like a Roman general and even an emperor of Constantinople. But the truth and actuality was Columbus was not related to any of these people.
Yeah.
Columbus was just the son of he was like a cheese vendor. Right?
A cheese vendor.
Yeah, his dad was a cheese vendor.
Wow.
Which even back then was kind of like, really?
That's what you do? You vend cheese?
You vend cheese, that's what you do. Hey, somebody's got to sell
Someone's
cheese.
Someone's got to vend cheese, man.
Especially in America, we basically just put cheese on our cheeseburgers and that's about it.
That's it.
But like in Italy, cheese is a big deal, man.
Oh, it's a big part of the diet. You're right.
Yeah, because Columbus is from Genoa in Italy. So
okay.
And also Genoa is pretty close to the south of France. We know how the French like their cheese.
They love their cheese.
Yeah, man.
Coq Monsieurs, all those.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's whatever you just said. So anyway, his dad was a cheese vendor, but Columbus himself was a merchant. Woohoo! But he was a lowly sea merchant, also not really something you would want to put on your resume if you want to impress the royal family. So he made up this whole story of having royal lineage. And he just kind of went with that story. He really, made it. He made it. He must have like told himself the story enough times to where like he had to have believed it on some level.
Where he believes his lies now.
But I don't want to say that, but like if you tell yourself something enough times, you'll kind of start to believe it, even though deep down inside it may not be true.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. He must have done some kind of trick like that because he really sold this story very well to the point where he actually got to marry into Portuguese royalty. Yeah. And it was through his connections in the Portuguese royalty that he was able to meet King João II. I think I'm saying that right.
Okay.
I literally just looked up how to say this name before we started this podcast, so if I butchered the pronunciation, I tried.
Yeah,
okay?
Blame Google Translate for that.
Yeah, blame me. It's not my fault. It's Google's fault. Anyway, so he got in contact with this King João guy, and Columbus said, "Hey, listen, I want to find a new route to Asia, okay? because beforehand they had to sail around of Africa to get to Asia, right?
The Cape of Good Hope.
Yes.
That's what they called it,
yeah. So and the Portuguese had discovered this earlier, and before that they were just using the Silk Road, right?
Yeah.
So they were doing overland travel as opposed to sea travel, which overland travel takes a lot longer than traveling by sea. Well, Columbus wanted to go due west because he figured, hey, the world's probably round, right? So I figure if I just go west, I'm gonna run into Asia at some point anyway. Yeah. And even if I don't, I might discover some new lands, and that'd be cool. Mm-hmm. So, and we can, depending if these lands aren't inhabited, we can claim them for Portugal. Start some mercantile trade going on there. Yeah. It'd be all good. And the king was like, okay, that sounds pretty good. Tell me, what's your whole, what do you want in return for this? Columbus goes, well, first of all, I want to be called Grand Admiral of the Oceanic Sea. The king's like, okay. Sure. And then he goes, and then I'd like to be given the office of Viceroy over any lands I find. Mm-hmm. And the king's like, okay. And then finally, I'd like 10% of all future commerce with any lands that I might find during this voyage, and I'd like that 10% commission be passed down to my descendants. And the king was like, yeah, we can't do that. But
that's an insane.
But he's like, we can't do that. It's kind of costly right now. Yeah. But maybe sometime in the future, I'll keep it in mind. But you hang around, Columbus. I like you. And so Columbus did for a while, and then he saw a new opportunity in Queen Elizabeth in Spain when he moved there a few years later, or Isabella rather, of Spain. And so he gave the same shtick to Isabella, and she was like, we can't really afford that right now because we're still trying to get rid of the Moors here in Spain. The Moors were this group. They were a Muslim group from northern Africa who had actually at one point controlled all of Spain. Yeah. And Isabella and her husband Ferdinand, who were extremely Catholic, worked very hard to get them out of Spain, basically.
The Crusades, right?
No, this wasn't the Crusades, but
the Inquisition.
Yes, well, yeah, the Inquisition was part of this. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So, but anyway, so she was like, but Columbus, I like you, man. You're very charming. Hang around here. And Columbus is like, well, okay, cool. So he'd come to the palace frequently until, of course, the Moors were completely gone from Spain. And Columbus gave this same pitch again to Isabella. And this time Isabella was like, yeah, all right, let's fund this voyage. So she agreed to name him Grand Admiral of the Oceanic Sea and give him the office of Viceroy for any lands he might discover. But in the fine print, she made it clear that she would not be giving him 10% of future commerce with these new lands that he may or may not find. But Columbus didn't read the fine print.
He didn't.
Apparently he didn't have a good lawyer or whatever. And he just signed it, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't matter because the funny thing about Columbus is he was not a skilled sailor at all. And again, like I say, he really didn't have any royal lineage, but he's so impressed, not just the Queen of Spain, but even the King of Portugal with his charisma, that they just they were like, oh, this guy must be legit, right? And even the first time he embarked on this voyage, it was a complete failure. And so he had to go back to Spain and ask for more money. And even then, Isabella was like, yeah, totally, let's do it.
Yeah.
And, if it wasn't for Columbus's, you could say overestimate of himself, the Americas would never have been discovered by the Europeans. Yeah. For better or for worse.
Definitely. This is a classic example of shoot for the stars, land on the clouds. Yeah. Right? Where this is all about in a way just proclaiming your royalty. You saying like, oh, I'm like a king. I'm like a noble person, and then sticking to it. We kind of see this reflected a lot in popular, in pop culture and things like that. Before recording, we John and I were talking about how this kind of mimics The Secret a little bit. With The Secret, you focus on things that you want to happen, and the things you don't want to happen, you don't focus on. The only difference is with The Secret, there's a lot of like, I want to get a Mercedes today, and then you just sit down and don't do anything about it. With this law, it's more like you claim, like you set your standard, and you kind of go like, I'm not going to be anything less than this, and then you continually work for that. And I kind of feel like you having that thought in your head kind of infects everything about you, and it affects other people too, because you say like, okay, I'm a king and I'm going to act like a king. And so, your posture's good. You walk around, you make bold actions, you speak with authority, and people respond to that. It's kind of like the antithesis of Law 10, the infection law that we're talking about, where the unhappy people tend to have an effect on you and tend to bring you down. Here, it's you continually thinking that setting your standard, which is a Tony Robbins thing. He says the same thing. When you kind of set your standard and you continually act towards that, it's there's kind of like an upward an upward spiral thing going on here, where you keep kind of propelling yourself upward, and you propel the people around you too. And when people see your charisma, your boldness, they respond to that also.
Yeah, and your success in whatever endeavor you're going for is completely contingent on others, right? Mm-hmm. So, and it's, it can be for anything. For if you want to get a job in a certain industry, right? Yeah. Well, somebody has to hire you, right? So why should you be hired over candidate X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
Right? And, in short, basically what you want to do is ask, well, in short, okay, if you ask for less, that's what you're going to get.
Exactly.
In life,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you ask for more, though, one of the three things is going to happen. Either you're going to get everything that you asked for, which is awesome.
Which is great.
You're going to get not everything you asked for, but maybe 50 to 80% of what you asked for, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
If it, at least you can build from there.
Exactly.
Right. Or if it's, if it's 80%, shoot, you could, that's a pretty good deal. Go with that.
Absolutely.
Or if you get none of those things, at the very least, you're going to inspire respect from that employer, or whoever else it might be that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that respect's going to pay off in the long run, because word does travel about people.
Yeah.
This employer at company A might go, I know about this John guy. I couldn't hire him in my company, but he seems like a really legit guy. He definitely there's definitely something about him. I think whoever does hire him, they're going to be very happy that they did.
Yeah.
And some guy from company B might hear that and go, well, shoot, I've been looking for a new whatever position this is. Let me try this John guy out.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that example is great too, because that's Law 5 right there, where it's like you having an attitude like this, it affects people, and people tend to be like, oh, there's something about this guy. He has a lot of confidence, a lot of charisma. And then the reputation about you goes around, and ultimately your reputation works like your hype man. You don't have to say, oh, I'm great, if other people are saying it for you, right? So if your reputation is saying that, then it's essentially like a small person going, oh, get this guy, hire him, or whatever. So it kind of works the same way.
And the best part about it is you may not be that amazing at it.
Exactly.
But if you just give off the impression that you are,
people respond to it.
People do.
Too.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's people. I mean, I'd always love giving this example, but I mean, like a Donald Trump is a guy who's 1,000,000% like this, where even when you talk about, when he talks about, even now, when he's on TV or whatever, he's talking about things, every failure that he has, he downplays, and every kind of good thing, I guess, that he does, he exaggerates. You know what I mean? And if you consistently do that, people will remember your wins more and will forget your misses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just something that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And people will be like, he is great. And I mean, before he was president, I know now like he kind of galvanized a lot of people, but before he was president, people loved him.
Right.
In general, people loved how kind of cutthroat he was and how he spoke his mind and stuff. Like people really, responded to that. And there's tons of people who, there's tons of like other examples of people like that who just they're constantly selling themselves a certain way and they act boldly and they consistently do it, that people just have no have nothing else to do but respect it and go like, okay, this guy might be over the top, but I respect what he's doing, and I respect his confidence and etc.
Exactly. So I found some in reading this. Robert Greene kind of listed some strategies you can go about applying this law, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them, which is what he called the Columbus strategy, was always make a bold demand. Well, like Columbus did, like he made some serious demands to the King of Portugal and the Queen of Spain.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you ask for less, that's what you're going to get. If you ask for more, you either are going to get that or part of that,
mm-hmm.
or at the very least inspire respect.
Exactly. Yeah.
So make your demands bold, and then another strategy is go after the most powerful, but in a dignified and respectful way, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, particularly in politics, they'll set their target on, their opponent, but they'll just cut them down. They'll call them stupid names or whatever.
Yeah.
And that, that works for some people, Donald Trump, but, but that has a short shelf life.
Yeah.
After a while. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that now with him, but we're already going Donald Trump heavy, and frankly, I just don't even want to talk about him. Yeah. But in any case, it's way more effective if you can actually go after this person in a dignified way. Yeah. And by that I mean like you're more kind of like in the political sphere, you're more critiquing them not as a person but on their policies and all that.
Yeah.
Right? That's way more dignified, and it gives you a lot more respect by the electorate as a whole, because even if they don't agree with you, funny enough, if you come off that way, people are more likely to elect you than some babbling man-child.
Yeah.
Who doesn't really have any anything of substance to say. They are just saying insults just to say insults.
Yeah.
Right? Even if people don't agree with what you're saying, they might go, hey, at least he has a level head on his shoulders.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. People don't respect that.
Exactly. Yeah. And even the person that you're, because there are going to be times where you're going to disagree with somebody, let's say on a project that you have to do for, a business or whatever.
Yeah.
You might, you can't just, it's really stupid to be like, no, we shouldn't do that because your idea is stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, it's better to go, I see what you're saying here, but, I really don't think this is a good idea for X, Y, and Z reason.
Yeah.
Right?
And you spell out why.
You spell out why that is. That's way more, that's going to, it's going to give you a lot more opportunities in the future, because let's say that person is superior and they go, no, we're going to do it my way because I'm the boss.
Yeah.
If you just call them a stupid butthead, well, they're probably going to fire you.
Exactly.
Or if they don't, they're not going to really trust you with any big projects in the future, because they're just going to see you as either immature or insolent.
Yeah.
Right. But if you approach this difference of opinion in a more dignified way, they might go, I got a lot of respect for that guy. Mm-hmm. even when he doesn't agree with me on something, he's not afraid to put his point out there.
Yeah.
And he's got, I respect this guy. He's not an immature little child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's Yeah, I think the being just a good dude along with this law goes a long way. I think that's definitely part of the
pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, because ultimately, in order for people to kind of enjoy you, they have to kind of see you as a person that means no harm, but who's just positive about, you know what I mean? Like who thinks positively but means no harm. They don't necessarily want to take anything away from anyone. They just want to, show people how great they are, I guess.
Pretty much. And I think the third thing is the third strategy that Robert Greene gave, which I thought was an interesting one, was give a gift of those. I'm sorry, give a gift to those above you.
Yeah.
This sets an equal plane between you and your superior
Kind of brilliant.
In a subtle way.
Yeah.
While also setting up a give and take relationship with this individual.
I think that's like law 12 or something.
Yeah.
Give and take, and
Yeah, I mean, like if like your superior above you, this is especially applicable in like a work context, 100%. I mean, you kind of are doing it anyway. If you're going to work, I mean, you're giving your time and your labor to this person so that their company can succeed, right? And if you do a good job, eventually that superior's, like I said, is going to have a tremendous amount of respect for you. And eventually, you will climb the ranks within that company.
Yeah.
Or if you don't and you decide, hey, it's time for me to move on, that person will write you a good recommendation,
100%.
at least. And so it's always a given. So by giving that gift of your time and your labor, you're also kind of sowing the seeds for something for yourself in the future as well. So it's not just that you're being a good person and all that, although that's reward enough as far as I'm concerned. You're also bettering your own self-interest in a way.
Definitely. And I feel like the maxim of dress for the job you want is kind of an extension of that too.
Yeah.
By giving a gift, you're kind of saying like, look, not only do I belong here, but you and I are on the same level. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
By dressing up for the job you want, it's like you're putting in your time and you're doing what you do, but you also present yourself as someone who's like an authority figure or someone who's higher than the level that you think I'm at right now. So when it's time for like raises or it's time for like promotions, they go, yeah, this guy belongs here. You know what I mean? And so you're essentially doing the same thing by doing that, because I mean there's people who might do a good job at what it is they do. If we're talking work, they might do a good job at what they do, but I mean they present themselves as the position that they're in. I mean I feel like to like the layman, to someone who's just doing the eye test and watching you at work and stuff, they might go, "Yeah, why should we give this guy a promotion? Like he's just he does a good job, sure, but I mean we don't deserve to bring him up higher than where he is now." So I kind of feel like they're kind of equal.
Yeah, I kind of hesitate in giving actual like physical gifts, because that can kind of come off as bribing.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
You give your boss a new iPad.
Yeah,
you want a promotion.
yeah. I don't know if I'd do that,
Yeah.
but there might be other instances, maybe not in a work context, but in another, where I guess giving a physical gift would have the same effect.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm amiss to think of any right now. But yeah.
Yeah. I do like the fact that you're imposing like the thing where you go like, look, I'm at the same status as you. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's easy to I mean I feel like we all have a tendency to kind of be hard on ourselves, and so I kind of like the fact that you go out of your way to say, no, I'm not only do I belong in the spot that I am, but I'm actually I deserve to be in a higher position. That's just something I really like, I guess.
Yeah, I just realized I used the word abyss in the wrong way, but oh well.
Oh yeah, abyss.
Amiss.
Okay.
Boo-hoo.
Yeah.
Someone's
listening, and
some grammar Nazi is gonna come after me for it.
Abyss, really? Dude?
Amiss, really?
Amiss, yeah. Jesus, I have abyss on my head.
Well, if you wanna come after me, you can email us at the 48 Laws of Power
podcast at gmail.com. You know what I mean?
And tell me how bad my grammar is. But well, something else I wanted to add about the gift thing was that it is a subtle way of kind of saying like, "Hey, we're on the same
we're on the same
playing
level.
field."
Yep.
It's not overt. Like if you're overtly doing that to like your superior,
Yeah.
they're gonna be like, "Dude, get out of here!"
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
who do you think you are?
A phrase that Green uses a lot in this book is arouse suspicion,
Right.
and I feel like that's what you do. When
Definitely.
You're constantly trying to like show your boss like, huh, what? You know what I mean? Like you're kind of your boss goes, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like if you have that kind of relationship where you're maybe not physical gifts, but you there's kind of a give and take with you and your boss, and in a way you're kind of saying, hey, we're on the same level, and whatever. Then yeah, like what Green says, you kind of set up a give and take relationship where I bring something here, and then maybe he gives me something too. But also you're bringing yourself up a level. So
Definitely.
that's what I like about it.
I wanted to say this quote by Robert Greene because I think it really it's kind of a good way to end our discussion here and get into the reversal a little bit.
Yeah.
But we'll also kind of throw in some last thoughts on this.
Definitely.
And this quote is regal bearing should not be confused with arrogance. Arrogance may seem the king's entitlement, but in fact betrays insecurity. It is the very opposite of a royal demeanor.
100%.
So basically, like, you want to advertise yourself and put yourself out there, but you don't want to be a jackass in the process of doing this, because that will backfire on you. It'll have the opposite effect from the intended one.
Because it breeds insecurity.
Yeah.
Arrogance and all that, because it doesn't come from a calm place. So one thing Green talked about in this book a lot is kind of that calm confidence, the confidence you have where you can do it, but you're not trying to like outwardly show people that you can, but
Yeah.
you're comfortable in what you know and how good you are at stuff, I guess. So by being arrogant, people pick up on the fact that you're probably overcompensating for something, or you're insecure about something, and that's something that I guess doesn't, this law, like the way you act when you treat yourself like a king, I guess what this law is saying is it breeds respect. People respect it, and people are drawn to it. Arrogance sends people the other way, right? Because they can smell it. They can smell that insecurity. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like those guys that drive the jacked up
Exactly.
pickup trucks.
Exactly.
Like we were talking about earlier.
Needless to say, I think this is my favorite law out of everything we've talked about. Just because it's I don't know, I'm super into like I like these self-helpy kind of things, but it's like I judge the truthfulness of something based on how many times I've seen it across different, like, maybe in different books or whatever else. And this theme of constantly just kind of self-talking and maybe just saying like, telling yourself you're better than what you think you are, I think is very essential. Because I've heard who is it? Tony Robbins talk about it, where he talks about how you constantly have to like set your standard, right? I feel like that's something we rarely do if you don't pay attention to it. You constantly have to remind yourself of, how good you are at certain things or how whatever, but you constantly have to assert that to yourself. At the same time, you also see it in nature. I've done some reading. I was reading a book where they were talking about how, who is it? Shrimp, in nature, how they react and how they deal with conflict. And it's all about the different battles that they've won, different battles that they've lost. And I kind of feel like this specific law relates directly to that. But instead, you're thinking of yourself as royalty. You think of yourself as someone who's elevated. And the more you think about that's essentially a win. And the more wins you have, the more it pushes you to win more. So I feel like this is just a theme that comes across over and over again. And it's absolutely my favorite law, and it's something that I think is essential for everyone to remember. It's very important to continually set that standard for yourself. And,
can you elaborate on the shrimp a little bit, since you
Yeah.
brought them up?
So the way that works apparently is out in nature. shrimp are very territorial, especially the men. And so what they do is they find territory out in the ocean bed or whatever, and then boom, that's theirs. So they're there and they stay there and stuff. And over the course of their lifetime, conflicts arise a lot because there's limited area out on the ocean bed or whatever, and other shrimp want to come by and fight them for that territory. So what they do is they fight. But they also shrimp are very cognizant of their past and stuff like that. So at every new conflict, they think back of past conflicts, and the more they've won, the more the more confident they are to say, okay, let's actually fight. The more they've lost, the more they go like, maybe let me not fight, and cower and run away. So the more wins you have, the more you'll be like, oh, I won last time, so I can take this guy. And then, because you've won more, you're going to fight harder to win and so whatever. But the more you've been broken down and you've lost, the more you'll go, let me not even try this because I'm probably going to lose again. And so the winners keep going up and up and up and up because they keep winning. So they keep going up in their society, I was going to say their food chain, but you get what I'm saying.
I got you.
And so the women, they can tell the men who are super confident, because they're walking around chest. I don't know if they have chests, but you know what I mean. They're super like, oh, I'm great, I'm whatever. So the women see that, and then they're all over those guys and stuff, and they reproduce or whatever. And the loser ones are just on the bottom. Women don't even go to them or whatever. They just wither and die, I guess. And it's kind of like that. I kind of feel like if you continually tell yourself, like, oh, I'm I'm a king, I'm a great person, and you continually tell yourself that, and you continually raise that standard for yourself, I feel like you get that same effect where every time you remind yourself of that, that's almost like a win in the shrimp world. And so that keeps going up and up and up. The more you tell yourself like, oh, I can't do this thing, I can't do that thing. I mean, people respond to that, dude. I feel like that's reflected in every area of your life. I mean, you walk around with your shoulders slumped and you're depressed and you're this and that, and people don't want to be around you, and then it just keeps, and then you just keep thinking like, man, now people don't even want to be around me, and whatever. So it's like a downward spiral. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, if you keep setting that standard for yourself, it's an upward spiral. So that's one reason why I think this is very essential for people to remember. No, you don't have to call yourself a king. You can call yourself anything else, but just remind yourself that you're or elevate yourself in any way you can, I guess.
Well, and those shrimp who got themselves beat down, that they were just to pick themselves up again and keep going, they might find themselves on top of the their little shrimp community there too.
Exactly.
So it's true with people as well. If you keep hitting roadblocks in your trajectory towards your goal or whatever, just keep pushing, keep going, don't quit. Exactly. The people who are successful are the people who didn't quit.
Exactly.
Everybody fails at something, at somewhere along the line in their journey to achieve their goals. But failure is just a step in the process. That's all. And in fact, you can learn a lot from failure.
Yeah.
And don't let your failures get to you. Just keep going, and even if you do fail, just be like, well, I failed.
Exactly.
Moving on. Keep that regal spirit alive. Right.
Absolutely.
It's one of my favorites too. I think it's my second favorite.
Oh yeah.
I like the one. I can't remember which one it was, but it's basically saying that don't isolate yourself.
Oh yeah, that one's really good too. Yeah, I like that one. It's very important.
Yeah,
the isolation one. Yeah.
But reversal time.
Let's do the reversal. I feel like we kind of touched on it a little bit. One of the main points is in the reversal, Green says, never make the mistake of thinking that you elevate yourself by humiliating other people. We kind of touched on that, where it's you kind of using your elevated status to make fun of other people or to make other people the butt of jokes and stuff. Like you're saying, John, it's something that people might respond to in the moment, but over time it kind of hurts you. People see that and they go, no, you don't really get the same amount of respect that you would from someone who didn't humiliate someone or who didn't use that quote unquote power to affect other people negatively.
Right.
And I feel like that's also another one of those things that's born from insecurity. If you have the need to pick on other people, it's because there's something maybe you didn't resolve in yourself as well. And the second point in the reversal that you wanted to talk to is it is never a good idea to loom too high above the crowd. You make yourself an easy target, where you get to a point where not only do you elevate yourself, but you elevate yourself way above everyone else, where you think not only are you great, but you think you're the greatest thing ever. I kind of feel like that's something that people don't respond to as well. And people tend to kind of think you're delusional, and you kind of tend to lose kind of, context with everybody else. And that's mostly it. He did talk a little bit about earthly vulgarity and you just kind of being too common. He says there's cases when it could actually work when you're kind of the common man, but ultimately it's about kind of being measured with that as well. So
well, touching on that, we should note that the actual dictionary term of vulgar doesn't just mean dirty things, right? Vulgar just means things that are common.
Things that
right?
are common, okay.
Yeah. So
like bourgeoisie, I guess, right?
Bourgeoisie is like
those are the rich people.
Well, they're like middle class,
okay.
upper middle class, rich too, I guess.
We're talking plebeians.
Yeah, we're talking plebeian stuff. Well, the only reason vulgar got the connotation it does is because it's not sacred, because it's more of a religiously derived connotation, and then it got just kind of subsumed into the non-religious world. But anyway, so I just wanted to make that clear. But well, I'll get back to that in a second. I wanted to quickly say that if you do put yourself way up above everyone else, you become a target, because everybody wants to see somebody who thinks that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. They want to see that person get, brought down.
Absolutely.
And also too, though, even if you do, legitimately rise the ranks, right? And you're not like a total douchebag about it. Yeah. Just be aware that there are people who want to see you fall from grace.
Yeah.
Either because they can subsume your position, or some people just like to watch the world burn, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's just something to be aware of. And going back to appearing common, I don't know. I don't think appearing, and this is my issue with the transgression because of this law, because the transgression of this law kind of goes into that a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to go into the transgression here, but it does go into this concept of appearing common is not a good idea. I don't entirely agree with that myself. You want to set yourself apart. That's true, but I don't think there's anything wrong with appearing like a regular person. In fact, I think that actually inspires respect from people, because you don't think of yourself as being anything greater than anybody else, or at least you're not giving off that impression of that anyway. And that just kind of endears you to people. Like, definitely, like when Thomas Jefferson became president, he had a very kind of open door policy and just wore like his normal clothes like around the White House. And people like admired him for that. It was such a break from John Adams, who is very
super aristocratic,
and people didn't like that because remember John Adams brought about the Alien Sedation Acts, where you could be put in prison for speaking out against the government, which kind of goes against the whole First Amendment, free speech and all that.
Definitely.
And Thomas Jefferson got rid of that, gave off this sort of, kind of, I don't want to say anti-establishment kind of feel, but kind of gave off that vibe that, oh, I'm here for the people kind of thing, and it endeared him to people because people actually believe that.
Yeah.
I'd say if you were doing that and it's clearly not believable, then yeah, it will work against you.
Yeah.
If you're just, trying to be one of the guys and you clearly aren't, yeah, it's really not going to work for you at all, It's
all about authenticity in a way.
There's got to be a measure. There's got to be some authenticity
Yeah.
in your common appearance in order for it to work. If it's not authentic, it won't work.
Yeah.
I think it's really that simple.
Definitely.
But attached to that too, I kind of think meekness and a commonness, but meekness in particular can elicit a sense of trust from people.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, okay, he's actually, he seems like a trustworthy person because he's not arrogant. He's very, kind of humble, right?
Yeah.
And I think that can definitely actually in kind of an almost ironic way elevate your power in a way.
Yeah,
kind of like Jesus.
Yeah,
he's a very humble person,
absolutely.
But he
the king of the Jews, but he wore the same stuff everyone else was wearing.
Yeah.
He was hanging out with the sinners,
and he was mocked for that, for being called the king of the Jews, but just kind of being like a regular guy. But look, now there's a whole religion based on his philosophy. So
literally the biggest religion in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Number one.
So there you go. Although meekness, I guess you could tie that to the idea of giving off an air of dignity, if not it being the same. Because, Christ was meek, but I think what attracted people to him wasn't just the fact that he was the son of a carpenter and didn't make any attempt to hide that. I think what kind of endeared him to people was the fact that he was such a dignified person, in a way. And, was kind of saying very controversial things for the time, like, go ahead and eat with the sinners, go ahead and, there's nothing wrong with tax collectors and stuff like that, which is very taboo in the Jewish society at the time.
Yeah. Jesus told a bunch of people not to stone a woman.
Yeah.
And he was the weirdo.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Remember that?
Yeah.
Different.
He was like,
yeah, exactly.
Pretty much just said, if you guys have never sinned before, then throw the stone.
Yeah. He who has not sinned cast the first stone.
Yeah.
Is the saying. Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. Like it's and yet he said it, and while these things were controversial at that time, he brought them up in a dignified manner to which people go, hey, you know what? He's right.
Yeah.
Kind of like what I was saying before, where, if you're going to go after the most powerful, or in Christ's case, the policies of the Jewish elite, if you're going to do it in a dignified and respectful way.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what he did.
Definitely.
Except that one time when he totally lost his mind and
destroyed the table.
The table at the temple because they were selling things during at the temple. But hey, sometimes it happens, man.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta destroy a table, prove your points.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, definitely.
But overall though, with some of those kind of things in mind, I definitely I think the reversal does hold true.
Definitely.
With some, little thoughts I threw in there.
Absolutely. I think that was solid.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, for the 48 Laws of Power podcast, I've been Rudy Malumba.
And I'm John Karp.
Signing off. Well, that was our take. What do you think? Email us at the 48 Laws of Power podcast at gmail.com.
Be sure to check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and like us on Facebook.
Listen in every Monday as we air new episodes.